Welcome everybody to the Deconstructor of Fun podcast. Today, finally, we get to talk about LiveOps, TikTok, and Q5. So today's topic is LiveOps strategies for Q5, and we have two phenomenal guests to discuss this, or not to discuss, to educate me. And first and foremost, we got Cesar Digeremenbashi. I hope I pronounced the surname correctly. Thank you. Head of EMEA for mobile gaming at TikTok. Cesar, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And we got the returning forever guest, Mr. John Wright, head of publishing at Quali. Easy surname to pronounce. Welcome, John.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you got mine right, just so you know.
Yeah. It's all right. Let's start off with, we got a lot of things to cover about LiveOps. But I want to start with some of the definitions. And the one definition that I need to understand is what is Q5? You keep talking about this in your PR releases, and it feels like most of the companies are missing this quarter. Is this why TikTok is so successful? Because you have one more quarter than anybody else?
Yeah, exactly. Q5 is the invisible quarter. For many marketers, across the world, around the world, it's a holiday season. But for the gaming hustlers, for us, it is the time after Christmas. It is the time for growth. It's the growth window. It starts after Christmas until mid-January, when people are typically on holiday or slowly back to work. But it is also a gaming time. It is the time that the users are on their mobile phones and entertaining, their time during this holiday season. And Q5 is known for, actually, from the advertising side, it's known for its efficiency with holiday-driven user engagement, and it is a very ad cost reduction that we are observing, and it's actually an ideal period to build momentum for the new year. For this time, it's 2025.
Interesting. So this is when people get their new devices, and plus they are not going to work, and plus they might have gotten, some monetary gifts that they can be spending on.
It was actually, the smartphone deliveries, back in time when they were quite high. It was the most popular gift, and probably it is still. But now the main driver behind Q5 is, all the big advertisers are actually pulling back, and they are on holidays. But as I mentioned, our gaming folks, they are capitalizing on this opportunity with the reduced CPMs and also a gaming audience that is more online.
Interesting. John, you've had your past is in the dark ad tech world. You've known Q5 for a long time. Are you capitalizing on Q5 at Quali?
I'm wearing Unity branding. I should have maybe should have changed my top, but yeah. Q5 from my old world was, as Cesar said, it's a really important time for all of us to make a lot of money. I think, the trends that you see during the period are 3 weeks of weekend highs, right? So what we normally see is that from a supplier perspective, a weekend is normally 30% higher than a weekday, right? i.e. 30% more users are trying to, play more games, viewing more content, etc., because they're not at work, they're not at school, and because of that holiday period and people are away, instead of having just 2 days a week with that 30% bump, what you're seeing is 3 weeks of that 30% bump because people are more accessible. And as Cesar said, what you normally see is in some channels a drop in CPM because the supply is up, right? More supply, not the same demand equals, cheaper eCPMs. But for us, it's an amazing time to be able to gain a lot more users, right? And start off the year in a very successful place. Normally that, I think most gaming companies would look to publish their last game of the year in November in the build up to Q5, right? To ensure that you're capturing all of that. It's like 2 events a year, summer holidays and Christmas are those 2 peaks where you really want to have a gaming market. And ultimately, there's a lot more disposable cash because it's the holiday season. People are a bit more flush, they're a bit more spending. So the number of paying users or percentage of paying users per game goes up, right? So all in all, you're getting more scale, higher quality, and it's a real window that you cannot miss out if you really want to make your year.
Okay, this is new. So Q5, important to have a scalable game at this time, but also important not to take these signals for real if you have a game in soft launch.
Completely. Yeah. I personally disregard most of December if you like for a game in soft launch because it's very essentially the data is not as I would predict it to be for the remainder of the year. It's a high period. You really need to make sure that you're aware that this is an outlier rather than the trend. Okay.
But if you're looking for an investment, I think it might be a good time to, benefit
Well,
from that.
now the investors know too. So when your game miraculously gets better after Christmas, it's not that your wish came through and Santa Claus came over with better KPIs. It's just the market.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, people are
Okay.
drinking eggnog, right? Like,
Yeah.
who knows? They're
Yeah.
just people a bit more happy to spend money.
Drinking, new phone, you got to download new apps, start new games, etc. So that makes sense. So today we're not going to talk about Q5, though that was interesting. We're going to talk about LiveOps. And I think the important part before we start talking about LiveOps and TikTok's new products for LiveOps success, I think it makes sense to define what do we mean by LiveOps, because I feel like every company has their own take of what LiveOps is. Some it's like the way they optimize sales. The others see it as the holistic live operations and live services after the game goes live. So, John, why don't you set up us on like what do we mean by live ops, and then we'll refer to that as live ops from now on.
Oh man, live ops. It's a term depending on who you're asking, when you're asking them, and who they are, where they work. It can have a multitude of things, but live operations in general is a company's ability or strategy to prolong a game's life cycle by whatever means, right? So that can be individual new features being added, that can be time sensitive events, that could be seasonality takeovers, that could be integrations with IP, that could be essentially a number of different things. But the goal, very simply, right, is to prolong the game's life cycle to ensure that it maximizes its pure revenue potential. And for this to happen, you need to have new content all of the time, right? And that is done in a number of ways that I've just explained. That's the very simple way I look at it.
And Cesar, do you agree with this definition of live ops?
100%. Basically, I am focusing on the goal here, and it is to prolong the life cycle, how you would keep your players engaged, and also increasingly how you would stand out and compete, because it's ever increasing competition. And if you don't, do those live ops or keep your game live and alive, the life cycle is going to lose against competition.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
And another point, I was just opening up one of the graphs. I could actually show this graph here, and then we can talk about why live ops is so important. So I wanted to show this slide that shows a couple of things. So one is number of new games releases on iOS App Store, and the other one is number of games in the iOS App Store. And there's kind of two things that I'm seeing here. The number of new games has been dramatically decreasing since 2016. To a point where we have less new games entering the market than we had over 10 years ago. And then when we look at the number of games in the App Store, that has also decreased quite dramatically, where the number of games is getting closer to what it was in 2012, and we're entering 2025. So first of all, John, I wanted to ask you, like, is this the reason why live ops is so important? Because we just have less new games and less games in the market?
Yeah, completely, dude. I've been talking about this probably for the last 18 months and saying that it's never been harder to launch a new game, right? Like, if you look at successful launches, right? With the current market conditions, launching a new game again is tremendously difficult for whatever reason. I'm not going to sit here and talk about ATT and everything else that's been discussed a million times over the last 2 years, but there's just been changes in the ecosystem that made things more difficult to do profitable user acquisition, right? And because things are now more difficult to acquire users and create profitability, increasing in operating expenses, the studios are more expensive than ever. That has resulted in the fact that studios can't launch games profitably, and thus it's ever more important to prolong the existence of your games. I'll give you an example for Quali. Our biggest game, Teacher Simulator, has celebrated its 4th birthday last week, and that's our number one game. It's 4 years old, right? Because of prolonging the game, doing very simplistic live ops, including events-based, just specials. Like, this is the way that you prolong those games. So, yeah, every studio is looking for that new big smash hit, right? Because that's where you see that big shark fin and what moved the needle most for a developer. But ultimately, your strategy, or a core part of your strategy, has to be to prolong the success of the games that were successful previously.
So, Cesar, I assume that this is well known information to TikTok and you, and that's why your focus has been, as a partner for publishers, has been focusing on how can we help you, and the publisher is saying, like, listen, we're not really launching that many games these days, not even one per year. We need help with growing our existing portfolio, and that's where you've developed the tools and the services to help with LiveOps, right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to also mention one thing. We talk about the number of games and how it is trailing, but what's more dramatic, I guess, is the share of revenue in the top 100 games. The share is increasing there. So, but the gaming industry is growing still after a blip. How we can help, the top and the long tail or mid tail, basically everyone that has a good game to basically stand out and keep their games alive for longer. That is currently what we are seeing is actually the top 100 are really good at running those live ops operations.
Yeah, 100%. And I also wanted to show another graph that kind of supports this. So in this graph, if you're not using YouTube or Spotify, you can see basically the games, how much the top games, the revenue of all games divided by how old these games are. And if you're looking at the graph, you can see that games that are 5 years or older are taking over 64% of all in-app purchase revenue. So not ads, not web shops, but just in-app purchases. And that number is constantly growing. And you can see at the same time that the games that have been launched in current year are decreasing, except in 2023. Hello, Monopoly Go.
Yeah, exactly.
With just shy of 3 billion, we're able to change the trajectory. But this kind of speaks of the concentration of the market and the maturity of the market, where games that have been longer in the store are sort of not dominating, but having their audience and not letting that audience go.
So, no, as I say, if you want to look at the gold standard right now, Mishka, and Cesar, I'm sure you've seen as well, but Supercell with Brawl Stars, a game that's 6 years old, just went from 10 million to 70 million a month through LiveOps. 7xing revenue at 6 years old. Wow. Hats off to the guys there, I can't even. I would love to talk to the people over there and understand how they did that properly, right? I have a good understanding, but it's crazy, and that's what you can do with correct live ops, right? That's why Cesar and the team are prioritizing this, is because that's the success you can get if you do it correctly.
Supercell is a very good, Brawl Stars especially is a very good, case study. And there's a lot to learn from that. I'm also glad that we were able to work very closely this year, and we were part of that growth. And we built this capability to basically to support these goals, like how you would be able to engage with your audience, your players, when you have those moments that you can more confidently go to market. They're behind their success. Of course, there are improvements in their game overall, new features. So they had something to say. We basically shouted for them.
Yeah. And that's by the way, like before we go into details of TikTok's program, Brawl Stars is a great example of when oftentimes when teams think about live ops, we on the product side we only think about product improvements, like the new balancing, the new feature, we did this, we did that. But Brawl Stars is a perfect example of not only the product side improvements, which there were many, but also the marketing side improvements, which there were plenty. I'd argue even more on the marketing side. You can see tremendous uplift in the user acquisition and the amount of new users coming in. So kind of combining those two is what successful live ops in 2025 really looks at. But talking about TikTok's live ops, like I've read a couple of these different press releases that you had on different platforms. What is it in practice? Because I didn't understand from the press releases of what are the tool sets that TikTok offers it partners to in the live ops program.
So the LiveOps program is our customized support for the post-launch activities to achieve the goals that we mentioned: higher engagement, retention, but also favorability. Building this favorable opinion on the gamers, and also improve monetization to extend the games or prolong the game's life cycle. And this year with that, we actually grew like 9x in this with the LiveOps program, and basically clients invested in millions. But as you asked, what's behind this? We built a dedicated team to support, to provide real-time support to LiveOps strategies, and it has three main pillars in planning, implementation, and measuring. So it starts with how we plan. Basically, starts with understanding the need. Is it a tentpole moment? What are we actually trying to achieve, and what assets do we have? And based on that, we support on the media plan side, like what solutions to combine, creative strategy, and also overall how long to run and ongoing optimization. On the implementation side, there are more details. Basically, it is like when the campaign is live, actually before coming to implementation, a very critical support is creative. I think I should mention a bit more on this, because creative is driving most of the success, majority of the success. We start with the ideation. Based on the goals and the assets we have, what can we also support with the ideation? Production, we support on the production, especially leveraging creators and our partners, which we call the program TikTok Creative Exchange, TTCX, and also customized packages for again with creator-led activities, buzz or creator-led packages. And overall, of course, there is a follow-up with the analysis of the creatives. So learning and then quickly iterating on these. And once the creative is ready, media plan is ready, then goes the implementation part, meaning the campaign is live, and what do we do there? It's basically there is a army of people to monitor, take actions, and optimize. We have product group of support. We have of course the account managers, creative side, and also to share some of the risk, we also offer commercial incentives for larger campaigns. Basically, we share the risk to see the results. And then, of course, planning includes the measurement, how we should measure the success, and the implementation side with the measurement side. And based on what the goals were, how did we reach to short-term and long-term goals, which short-term goals are, everything is, of course, at the long term, it's ROAS. We understand, but what drives ROAS is sometimes it's, daily active users, how much it's increasing, K factor, ARPU, average revenue per user, or average revenue per paying user, how the activity, overall media was effective in driving this. And what sticks is also, some of the brand metrics, which is, I think the most effective one is favorability. Like when people the gamers hear about this game, do they have positive feelings? As we know, gaming is mostly about psychology, how we feel towards it.
John, this sounds too good to be true.
I mean, I'm really curious about a few things.
Elevate your game development with Heroic Labs, the cutting-edge platform for building multiplayer games. And you need an edge to be successful in today's gaming landscape. Their scalable Nakama server empowers you to create compelling, real-time multiplayer experiences effortlessly. Benefit from features like in-game chat, leaderboards, matchmaking, and more, all designed to enhance engagement and retention. Whether you're developing for mobile, console, or PC, Heroic Labs gives you the tools to bring your community together. Unleash the full potential of your game with Heroic Labs, where every developer is a hero.
Can I take your seat for a second? Can I ask some questions?
Yeah. That's why I'm passing the ball.
Look, Cesar, what you're selling, I'm buying. All right, I think that was a very good explanation. But from my perspective, I think the thing that's most interesting, the thing I was most curious about, and I think probably the listeners will be most curious about, is the difference in the creative strategy. So how do you, like, from the generation of the asset, the ad, the creative itself, what's the differences between, say, a new game, or what do you do differently from getting a new game user versus a LiveOps user? Is it purely about the event, the season? I would love to know a bit more about that, because I think that's really interesting.
Of course, with LiveOps, the key message is important. And if you're going to a new user, or with an existing user that you're re-engaging, actually the key message is not going to really differ. Like the reason that you're inviting them to the game, I think it is either new or existing. It's the same. You have something to say. So what that is should be something exciting for even broader than what you already have. So it is in one way, it is to expand your audience. And TikTok actually is mostly effective on how you would expand your audience when there is a red ocean that you're competing, opening up that blue ocean. On the creative side, of course, the upper funnel, so to say, and the creative, that makes a difference. Basically, if you're talking to more emotions and you're talking about something that your players are caring about, it's more branding. But what you're going for is not branding. It's actually in total, this is a sale activity, but it has branding effects. So while we look at performance, but we differentiate our goals with the creative style that that we present. Basically, creators are tapping into both sides, are able to, because they provide the familiarity, which brings trust. Like you're hearing this from someone that's sharing the experience, and it is entertaining, or it comes with a storytelling. It touches those emotional parts, but also you are hooked into what the core element that you're saying. Like you have this new content, this IP collaboration, etc. This is what basically expands the overall reach and engagement.
Got it.
Further questions?
No, the only other thing I was more curious about, which I've seen as a bit of a trend, and I don't know how it impacts TikTok, is this like AI actors versus actual UGC, because there's a big cost component from a developer's perspective of paying like actually a person, right? And especially if they have a large audience, and what is it like? The rumor of Kylie Jenner got paid like $5 million to do play Tika ad or whatever it was, So I'm curious from TikTok's perspective, because you are the originators of that UGC ads, in my opinion. Like, how do you see that? Do you see it as a trend or not?
So, since you mentioned, Kylie Jenner or celebrities, I have this kind of pyramid in my head that how to basically approach. So, on top there is celebrities that has massive engagement. If you want to expand your audience and catch attention, that's very, very strong. But in the end, what is ideal is you want your own actual players, to talk about you. So from celebrity to influencer to creator to user. And what we aim actually is to really make your users want to participate and expand the overall impact. So from celebrity to those your players, how you would drive a conversation, because that conversation is going to drive the conversions. And not every campaign has to have celebrities, but there is also sweet spot. And the idea is the feeling that everybody is actually talking about it. Branded mission, for instance, that TikTok has as a solution is giving the community a brief, and they participate to the question or to the creative brief the way they want, and basically showcase their creativity around the game. So this is one of the sweet spots that I can mention, and TikTok's unique solution in how to drive crowds, masses to talk and participate to the game's LiveOps campaign.
I have a question, and before that, I need to do a correction. It wasn't Playtika. It was Moon Active. Travel Town.
Sorry.
Yeah. very, very important.
My Israelis confused. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So, like you offer everything with this. You got a media plan, creative strategy, production, implementation, creators, analysis, measurement, commercial incentives, brand metrics. Who is this for? Like, meaning it can't be for everybody. Like TikTok is probably has some kind of criteria of the partners that get the full suite.
Of course, it starts from the need. Who needs to compete effectively and to create a differentiation? It's for everyone, because it's not like you will work with celebrities. There is always a solution based on the need and the scale. But what matters is there should be a threshold that is going to basically drive the results. So, every trend, actually, there is an 18% that you should basically touch, and then it breaks through. So that is the minimum. That 18% you should touch, and how you would expand from there. On the bare minimum, like bare minimum, if you can call a content update in your game, and then have a retargeting campaign, you can call it LiveOps, but this is not the LiveOps that I would define and I would suggest. Is it going to really, drive the results that you're aiming for? So based on each objective, if you want to go really big, to drive favorability, expand your audience, this requires creative differentiation, something big to say, a relevant media plan behind it, and moving masses like branded mission, sometimes out of phone in the offline side, to participate that.
I'm asking because, Deconstructor Fund works with a bunch of different publishers that have some of their portfolios are a little bit long in the tooth, like they're LiveOps games, but they haven't grown in a significant amount of time. And so a lot of publishers are probably looking at their back portfolio profitable games and trying to understand whether they should invest and see if they can grow those games that, are 5, even older than 5 years, running on a quite lean of a live operations, or should they focus on EBITDA and just, even further automating the live ops on those titles? And of course, given the recent market trends, not recent, but during the last couple of years, most of the publishers are asking themselves, can we actually grow some of these older games? Like, look at Brawl Stars, 6x growth 6 years after. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. Like should publishers who have games that have, are profitable but have plateaued in their live ops, how do they get in touch with TikTok? Like, what's from that point of like, I have this game, it's relatively, it's making, let's say, 1 to 2 million a month. Can I get it to 5 to 6 a month? Like, what's the process like with TikTok?
I think the best example to mention here is, if you remember, Dumb Ways to Die, a game that became popular once again after 12 years. Once it's fun, it can be fun again. It's all about how you are going to market and, how you would create that excitement. And TikTok, was the perfect place for them with the song that they had. And there was outside of the game culture that they were able to tap into. So it was something that, worked for them as how they could revive their game. It really, should be customized based on what do we have as an asset and as a message, and then we can work on that with our dedicated team. We are working closely, so if the only thing is the objectives should be clear and they should want it, we are ready to support.
What material do I have to have, or is good to have before engaging with TikTok? Like,
gamer experience. So they're, when we are investing in it, the retention and their overall feedback from the players should be there. It should not be just a marketing, success. It should be also, kept with their in-game experience. So there should not be bugs and, the failures, etc. If we're talking about 12 years, they were, still doing well. But these are the hygiene factors of success. Mm-hmm. So in all cases, games that are fun, and what gives that 5-star ratings in App Store and Google Play, it is what really matters.
John, how
would help in the further stage is, of course, at best IP collaboration, so that they can tap into an audience that is already there. So these are marketing side of tactics that we can really leverage.
John, how would you engage with like let's say you're working with a long in the tooth portfolio, profitable?
I mean, I've actually got an actual perfect case. So after 7 years, we've just relaunched one of our games called Tens, which the last 6 months, this game it had tens of millions of players over the last 7 years. A traditional puzzle game, a never-ending puzzle game, which was the common sort of thing 7-8 years ago. And we looked at the metrics. We saw day 90 retention was still like upward single digits, and we were like, wow, like there's something here. Like it's gone down because it's been so long, but the team just spent 6 months basically changing the level structure, adding in new features, meta game, leaderboards, all of this other stuff that brings it into the modern day era and what players are used to seeing and playing. And essentially off the back of that, we've been able to increase the metrics, 50% on day 30, day 90, all of this other stuff. And after 7 years, instead of rolling out a sequel, we're just going to replace the build with the new build with the old one. And so all of the original players will move to the new build. And then we're going to start redoing UA. And then I'll be speaking to Cesar about TikTok. And but 7 years old, man, and it's miraculous that Qualia are working on 10 to 12 new games any time, right? Any month, I've got 10 to 12 games that I'm reviewing. And the game that we've launched this quarter is a game that's 7 years old. So again, if you can, refactor the game and update it, add all of the new sort of meta progression and everything that people are used to, hard levels, all of this other stuff that Rollick have made famous. Like, you start doing that with some of the back portfolio and metrics start improving, and then before you know it, you're redoing UA and you're scaling, right?
5 actually is the best period really to benefit, because it starts from a very low cost base. The old games usually has not as strong, like not to speak general, but usually not as strong monetization success. If it is going to be quick, I think cost side of kind of advantage is going to be helping a lot. And Q5 is usually what I see, the old games reviving and coming as nostalgia. I see them a lot.
It's no secret why we launched it this week, right? Like 2 weeks until December, So yeah, we're trying to sneak out another launch in the next 2 weeks as well to try and get into Q5. So again, what Cesar is saying is very poignant. Developers are trying. If anything, you're cutting content to try and make the timelines and then pushing stuff back into the January sprints, right? So. Yeah, it completely aligns with the strategy and what TikTok, Cesar is saying about TikTok at the moment with Q5.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance. Damn. And Cesar, what are the sort of success metrics that you use to evaluate the effectiveness of these LiveOps campaign on the platform?
So, of course, at the business goal, it is to prolong the life cycle, but and the ROAS. But what drives that is something to consider. What I would look at as a successful LiveOps is before and after you see a shift. So, and shift in, basically daily active users. Are you reaching to more users, and are they more engaged, and are they paying more? So these are the 3 things that, the campaign overall is reaching to its goals. Not necessarily with only TikTok, but from TikTok side, of course, we would like to contribute to that. These are kind of things that you can observe in the short term. Also, the improvement in K factor and organic. But the long term, I think the strategic ones is harder to see, harder to measure. So, the organic and K factor, I think, is more strategic. And the brand metrics like favorability or being top of mind, these are also helpful for the longer term. The measurement side is how to basically see the long-term effects in the short term. So this is another approach that we are basically looking at, how so to say brand performance is in place while you're investing in expanding the audience, etc. How are they going to support the long-term success and overall ROAS? John, I think if you can say more on this, like how you would say a LiveOps campaign is successful.
But yeah, look, I completely agree with what you just said. Essentially, what we're looking for is any LiveOps like event in theory is adding new content in some way or description, right? And if we look at we looked at the Supercell example, you've got new seasons or new campaigns or something that goes live. What you want to see, or the same thing for us, is as soon as that new content goes live, you want to see a jump, right? You want to see a step up. You want to see DAO go up. You want to see UA go up. You want to see your base metrics go up. What we normally see is that user behavior around events or again, LiveOps in general, there is a peak or an increase in base metrics. And that then powers UA and scale and DAO and everything else is a combination or a correlation to those data points. So ultimately, every time we do something, what you don't want to see is you've just spent a load of money on an IP integration with Hasbro or Mattel, and then you don't see any uplift, right? It's just like it stays flat. That's what you don't want to see. You want to see when you jump up, and as long as you're seeing those uplifts, right, and you're seeing those metrics improvements, and there is a correlation to that, then this is exactly what we want. The real question is, what does success look like? Is it 5% uplift or is it 50% uplift? And where do you meet in that area? So
and how the ROI calculation is, because if you look at the just 7 days, the ROI may seem different than the 30 days to 90 days, because the goal is before and after. There should be an after. Of course, during the campaign period, there would be an upside, but when it comes back, is it also higher than the previous base? So it is to change the base.
I want to show actually one more chart with this. So this is just a random game, but this is sort of a stuff that I'd like to personally look at when I see the performance of a title, like the first graph. And this is basically this is from friends at PVX Partners that are focused on UA financing. But basically, what you see here is you see different cohorts that are based on month, and you can see the payback, which is the 1.0. So that's what you're trying to reach. And of course, all the cohorts are net revenue. And when I'm seeing that something has improved, ideally what would need to happen, or not ideally, what needs to happen is not per se how fast you reach the payback, because that is highly dependent on the market condition, but it's really the shape of the curve. And in this case, you can see a title that has clearly launched probably in Q5, and every cohort subsequently has been doing not so good, and the shape of the curve have changed quite significantly, where even if you would extend this to 12 months or 24 months, you would likely not see it reaching ROAS. And so ideally, the way I understand is that the success that you're looking at, because you mentioned that there will be focus on elements like shifts in DAU, shifts in average revenue per paying users, shift in probably revenue retention, so that the payers are staying longer, K factor and brand metrics. All of these would be seen as the newer cohorts the cohorts that are coming through TikTok. The LTV, the shape of the LTV curve is changing, and it's changing towards that it's going up and up, and that shows that not only are you having immediate success with the campaign, but you're also having a long-lasting success with the curve not plateauing so quickly, and you can extend the payback, and hence the payback period doesn't matter that much. Did I get it somewhere right?
John can vouch for that.
Yeah,
For me,
yeah. Sorry, yeah. I mean, from my perspective, yes. Like as you said, like the payback is related to the CAC, right? So if the CPIs or whatever the cost is more expensive, then that will fluctuate, right? But really, what you want to see is your average revenue per user or average revenue per paying user. You want that to see that you want the LTV curve to be above the base one, right? And that shows that there has been a higher adoption of either new users or existing users in relation to your revenue-based metrics. So if the LTV curve remains the same shape but is a level above, that means that ultimately you've gained your RPD, or your revenue per user, is better than it was before. And if that is linked to a particular event or a LiveOps sort of event, then obviously that means that it's been successful.
And Cesar, do you see when you work with your with publishers as a partner, do you see the customer acquisition cost going down, or like what's the sort of immediate effect of these campaigns?
So the immediate effect is actually the increase in organics and overall efficiency of UA, because once you prime the audience, it is also providing more signals to all channels in that specific geo. So you would create a kind of efficiency through that wider exposure. Of course, the key goal is to turn this into value and long-term value with the LTV. So it also depends on how you're onboarding them to the game, and what are you complementing it in terms of your monetization in the game, or overall what you're promising, are you keeping it in the game?
And what's the is there some kind of a balancing between the immediate campaign success that you can get through TikTok and then those long-term player retention goals? Like how do you track those two different things?
Long-term retention, John can share more on this. It depends on many things. What I would look at the short term is, of course, a jump in DAU. Are we expanding the audience, and are we able to drive across the board a user acquisition efficiency? But the retention, it depends on, I guess, many things, and the main driver of retention, as far as I read from the reports, is if the game is fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I completely agree. The thing with long-term retention, very simply, is you need continued content to bring people back. And LiveOps is a way to inject content, right? So, say, for example, a user has played through 30 days of content and they've gone through all of the main sort of, 1,000 levels of something, right? And they've hit the cap of your puzzle. If there's no replayability elements, then you have to make sure there's P versus P or some form of tournament-based system to allow that, right? But ultimately, at a certain point, someone will get bored of that as well. So how do you get people back? You get people back, and this again impacts long-term retention of users and increases the LTV dramatically by re-engaging or having content or new things for that person to come back to and get engaged with. So as long as you're able to effectively do that, then LiveOps in general will continue to improve your long-term retention, which overall increases your LTV and ultimately means that your studio EBITDA is higher, right? Which is what we all want.
Of course. All right. It seems like TikTok is really offering a full suit for publishers to really scale their LiveOps games, whether they are new or whether they have been, for a longer time and kind of matured in the market. To kind of cap off this conversation, like what advices would you give to the developers who are starting off with LiveOps campaigns on TikTok? Like, what's the first point of contact? Now they've listened to this, they're like, this sounds amazing. John is buffing this up as well. I need to get on this LiveOps train right now. So where do I start?
So, if this is a new start, I would think, of course, with conversation, we will customize this, but an ideal small start would be like this: selecting a geo where there is a competition, leveraging creators and thinking of a creative difference, and measuring the impact. Basically, select the geo where you can also have a geo comparison, either synthetic or actual geo that you can compare two geos. Apply, this audience expansion and overall exposure with leveraging creators and a different creative that you are going with the LiveOps key message. Expose minimum, I think 60% of the target audience, so that there should be a sizable exposure, that it should mean something, and measure, and then learn, and if your strategy is working, creative and everything, in the next one you can scale. This is I guess the minimum start. But what is needed is something to complement within the game, or a partnership that would enhance the message, what you're going to market and how you're exciting and inviting the players. That is something to be, I think, essential. Sometimes, actually, I've seen that too. Creators are finding this. So leveraging creators are really at the core, because they find something that you maybe even didn't think about your game, and they can bring that story. That's something as an exploration, and it can work at a small scale in a selected geo. But the goal is, again, measuring towards what you would call a success, and are you able to compete also effectively, gaining those UA acquisition efficiencies, expanding audience, etc.
And does TikTok help with selecting the right geo? Like, do I start with tier 3, tier 2? Do I go directly to tier 1 geo? Like, what's the typical approach?
So basically, it should be something, some geo that we see. Okay, we are behind our potential here. Either there's a competition or they reach to a kind of a ceiling, and you would see it from the UA cost increasing. So how can we unlock this is one of the objectives. So this geo, of course, it's a discussion with the publisher. So we should find this together. There are certain geos that TikTok is very strong also. When the LiveOps campaign can only go with TikTok, and we can only see, we can see the overall impact, and you can also see on the UA channels in the bottom line how it is impacting, so that measurement is much easier.
Sounds clear, John. What I didn't ask that I should be asking?
What did you not ask? We spoke about LiveOps in general, in theory. I think one thing that we didn't cover off was more like culturalization LiveOps. So basically, like, how you tailor LiveOps to individual audiences. The prime example is you don't use the number 4 in China, right? Because it's like signifies death, right? Like, there's all of these sort of individual trends that you need to you need to think about, depending on the location. Like, do you do something special in Germany around, a select cultural event? Is it worth it? Is it going to move the needle? It all comes down to the scale and DAO that you have and the partners that have the reach. Like, TikTok are massive everywhere, so that's not really a problem for them. But, that's one sort of maybe like the sub layer that we didn't get into today, but something people should think about.
Of course, the creative is at the core, and cultural elements and the localization, and what TikTok has as the advantage, and that's why I mentioned the creators should be in the core, is to solve for the cultural relevancy, the storytelling, and making it also relevant to what is top of mind in that geo at that time. So really surfing the trend. So that makes a difference. And also, besides the creators, either through TTCC, also the partners through TikTok Creative Exchange. These are all, by the way, under the new platform TikTok One. So it is becoming more streamlined and easier to run these creative production and get creative insights. For instance, through there you would see what's trending in that certain geo, and it is going to basically fuel your brief. But most of the time, creators are helping more than you can imagine. I've seen a few cases where they basically create a song for the game.
Wow. Hopefully a good song.
Yeah,
and a dance.
And I think there's a lot of potential with the integrating music and sound into those campaigns, leveraging creators.
Damn. Yeah, and that makes TikTok truly unique with the creator network that you have, and automatically localizes and culturalizes the ads because they're created by local creators. Okay. And boost up your LiveOps with TikTok. Seems like a very interesting product, very interesting offering. Can't wait to have companies. I know that many companies we've discussed, big companies, are using TikTok LiveOps toolsets and features because they're so big. It will take a time before they can come out and talk openly about them, but can't wait till they share their learnings with TikTok. But I know several very large companies that are using it, so exciting product, very much needed for the market and for the publishers, and you should give it a go. So thank you, Cesar, for coming on the podcast, explaining what you guys are doing.
Thank you, John.
And thank you, John, for keeping this conversation sane, because I don't know what I'm talking about, and you're the Mr. Publisher here. So luckily we get the right information. So thank you, John.
Yeah, look, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the chat.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and catch you next time.
Thank you.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.